Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I am Sean. Today I am doing a book haul slash part 6, I think, of all my signed books. So let's get into it. Beginning with the unsigned books, I have the Lord of the Rings trilogy. So Fellowship of the Rings, do I even need to say what the books are? The Two Towers and Return of the King. So you might be wondering, have I not read Lord of the Rings? Well, the answer is I don't really know. I'm not sure. I think I've read all of the Two Towers and I think all of Return of the King. I am not sure if I've ever read Fellowship of the Ring. So even if I did, it would have been years and years back. So now, especially that I have at least some familiarity with the Silmarillion, I've never read it, but I'm at least familiar with it. I've watched a lot of like Lord of the Rings videos on YouTube. I'm a lot more familiar now with J.R.R. Tolkien's world, so I'm definitely intrigued in giving the Lord of the Rings trilogy a deep dive and seeing if I really like it or not. I am a little unhappy that it's the movie covers because generally I would avoid movie covers for books, but I don't think it really matters. And these, I just got them to read. These aren't like for collecting, so as soon as I'm done reading them, I'll just give them back to the bookstore. So, yeah. Next, I have The Terminal Man by Michael Crichton. So this was one of his earlier books, and at this point I am definitely a Michael Crichton completionist. I think I've definitely read more than half of his books, so I'm intrigued on giving it a read. Just offhand, like the books I recall liking, of course, Jurassic Park, The Lost World, Airframe, I love that book. Congo was okay. The Great Train Robbery was pretty good. A lot of his other books, though, I think have kind of been misses. They just didn't really work for me, so I'm curious to see which one this falls under. Next, I got this book a little while ago, but Dante's Inferno. And this is on the top 1,000 list, 1,000 books to read before you die by James Mustich. And so I was kind of looking at it, and one, I saw his poetry, which was a real concern because I'm not a fan of poetry. But then I saw it says here, 2, Purgatory. And so I was like, what? Is this a series? And so, yeah, apparently. So the first book, I had to get it, is Inferno, Dante's Inferno. The second book, Purgatory. The third book I do not have, but it's called Paradise. So anyway, since this is a top 1000 book, and I am also writing an Angels and Demons series, which I talk about in one of my recent videos, which I'll post up there if you want to go give that a look. Since I'm writing an Angels and Demons series, I am intrigued on this topic, and darn it, that's I think the third time I've used intrigued in this video. So apparently I'm going to use that word a lot, so intrigued watch. So ordinarily I would give this a real short leash. I may read just like one line or a couple lines and be like, nope, not for me. But since it's a topic I'm intrigued about, darn it, there's 4. I'm going to try to give it more of a chance. Next is Herodotus, the Histories. So this is also a top 1000 book, and I'm a bit curious about this because Herodotus is a character from Assassin's Creed Odyssey. So I just kind of like it for that reason, and I am also a fan of history, so I'm curious to see how it goes because I think the thing with Herodotus is he was pretty unique because he was like one of the first guys to really try to write a, how do I say, I don't want to say non-biased history book, but he was really trying to give an accurate depiction of history. So until that point, a lot of like historical accounts were like mired with mythology and legend and embellishment. But Herodotus was trying to create an accurate depiction of history. So I don't know how well he does at that, but I don't want to say intrigued. I'm interested in how it goes. Next is Jack Kerouac, On the Road. So this is a top 1000 book, and I am also interested in it. Whew, I didn't say intrigued. Because I have a signed book by Ken Kesey. And Ken Kesey is the author of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which I read recently. And again, I'll try to post... Did I do a review of that video? I think I did. If I did, I'll post it up there. I liked One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, so because of that, I kind of became a Ken Kesey completionist. And this book, Jack Kerouac on the Road, is apparently about like Ken Kesey. I don't know the full story, but he apparently like had some kind of a bus trip with like some hippies, and it was like across the country, I guess. And so I don't know anything about it, anything else about it but that. But anyway, so this is a top 1000 book. It's about Ken Kesey, who I definitely like, the author of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. So, I was about to say it again. I don't know quite what to expect, but I'm looking forward to reading it. And I am trying so hard to avoid saying intrigued. I keep wanting to say it about every 5 seconds. Next, going off that book is Ken Kesey, Sometimes a Great Notion. So I don't know anything about this book. I don't know if it's like one of his more popular books or what. I don't know where it comes like in his like publishing order. Like I don't know if this is his first book or what. But I saw it as a Ken Kesey book, and I'm interested in reading all of Ken Kesey's books at this point. I've heard of this book though, Sometimes a Great Notion, so that's also why when I saw it, I was like, I've heard of that, and it's Ken Kesey, so I wanted to give it a try. This next book, the author I read a little while ago, and I did not like it much at all, and that was Philip Dick, and what was the book titled? The Man in the High Castle. I just had so many problems with that book. It just didn't really do anything for me. I did a whole review of it, which I will actually try to link at the end of this video. But anyway, Philip Dick is on the top 1000 list for several books, including Man in the High Castle, and this book, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, better known as Blade Runner. So I've never actually seen the movie Blade Runner or any Blade Runner movies, so I don't really know anything about it. All I know, I think, is that it's like set in the future and it's kind of like a dystopian something, but I don't know anything about it whatsoever. And I do love that title though, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? That's a great title. So don't say intrigued. I'm very interested in giving it a try, just because like I've never watched Blade Runner, so this is kind of my introduction to it. So I don't know anything what to expect. Since I know Blade Runner is such a popular movie and I don't know anything about it whatsoever, I'm kind of hoping that maybe I'll kind of like the book well enough to want to see the movie or see some of the movies, because I just don't know anything what to expect about it. I think with Man in the High Castle, my expectations were raised a little bit because I saw a lot of like the promotional materials for the show. And so I was thinking, oh man, this looks pretty cool. This show looks pretty neat. So when I read the book, I don't want to say, but that's in that video. So if you want to see that, wait till the end, go click over to it. Next, I did a recent review of a Graham Greene book, and in the aftermath of doing that review, I saw another book at the bookstore by Graham Greene, and that is Brighton Rock. So, Brighton Rock is one of the more popular Graham Greene books, and I think chronologically it might be the next book he wrote that I don't have. I mean, at this point I'm kind of a Graham Greene completionist, so I want to read every Graham Greene book, but I do not have any book by him until like his 13th book, and I think this book may have come before that, so this might be the next Graham Greene book that I read. It's very well regarded among Graham Greene fans. Like, a lot of fans consider this their favorite book by him. It is not on the top 1000 list though, but that doesn't really matter because I want to read every Graham Greene book. The next new book is John Updike, The Maple Stories. So this is a book on the top 1000 list, and I'm curious about reading it because I actually do have a signed book by John Updike right over there, Roger's version. But he's written so many books that I don't know which book to start out on. And since this is, I think, the only book by John Updike that's on the top 1000 list, I figure, well, this is a good book to start out on. I asked the bookstore owner like what he thinks about John Updike, and he said in his opinion, John Updike is kind of a difficult author to read because, he says, he just does everything so well that he's just kind of flawless in his writing that there's not much to say about it. So he kind of basically says it's just all around good. So what can you say about it? So I don't know. I will probably not think so. I'll probably hate him just because I'm a very critical reader, but we'll see. The bookstore owner really likes him, thinks he's a real flawless, good writer. So I'm curious if I'll think the same thing. Whew, I didn't say intrigued. So anyway, The Maple Stories by John Updike. Next, I saw this at the bookstore, I think last week maybe, but Roald Dahl, Going Solo. I am currently reading Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and I have also read up on Roald Dahl's life, and he had a pretty interesting life. Like in World War II, he flew planes like around Egypt and Greece, so that's cool. So I saw this book and found out this is about his time in the war, so his experiences in Egypt and Greece. So usually I would not be interested in reading something like that. I'm not into memoirs, but I liked Matilda, a book off the top 1000 list. That's the only Roald Dahl book on the top 1000 list. I am currently reading Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. So in a way, Roald Dahl is also kind of become an author I want to read every book by. But when I got this book, I saw this part right here says, continuing the story begun in Boy. So this is apparently book 2 of his memoirs. And I've heard of that book before, Boy. But I wasn't really interested in it until I saw that it's really book 1 of his memoirs and this is book 2. So I don't want to start out on book 2 of his memoirs, even though I am more interested in this period in his life. But still, I just don't want to start book 2 and not read book 1. So I had to get book 1, Boy. And I just got this today. Last on the non-signed books is The Education of Henry Adams, an autobiography by Henry Adams. So I don't really know who Henry Adams is, I think. I think he was a historian, kind of. I think he was actually related, like, distantly to, like, John Adams or John Quincy Adams. I don't know how, like, you know, maybe a grandson or something like that. And so I think he was kind of a historian, and I'm not really interested in that, but this is a top 1000 book, so I got it. I do actually like history though, but I don't like memoirs, so I just don't know. This is like a memoirs or an autobiography by a historian, I think, so it's kind of like, we'll see how it goes. Okay, and now for the fun part, the part I have been waiting for, the signed books. So, we begin with Barbara Kingsolver, Pigs in Heaven. In a previous video or two, I pronounced her name as Barbara Kingslover, which apparently that's not it. It's Barbara Kingsolver. So anyway, I've seen this book at the bookstore forever, and I didn't get it because I read or tried to read another book by Barbara Kingsolver. Maybe I've tried to read 2 of her books, and I just didn't really like either one. So I wasn't really interested in this book too much. That's why I haven't gotten it. But I know she is a pretty popular author. I mean, like, some people like really like this author. So since I have a signed book by her, maybe it'll help me get interested in her. I don't know. At some point I'll probably give this a read though, but probably have a pretty short leash on it. I don't know. It'll have a little bit longer than like an unsigned book would. Since it's a signed copy, I'm going to want to like it because I won't want to have a signed book that's like, oh, I hate that book, you know? I'll want to like it for that reason. I'll give it a try at some point and we'll see if I can like it and if I can get into this author or if this is an author who is just not for me. But anyway, I had some store credit at the bookstore, which means I could basically get a book for free. And so I chose this book. So I did not pay anything for this book. So that's nice. I just got it for free. Next, I think I also had store credit, so I think I got this book for free as well, but that is Terry McMillan, Waiting to Exhale. The reason I have heard about this book is because in the DVD commentary for Spaceballs, the Mel Brooks movie, he mentions that a real big movie that is out at the time he is recording that commentary is Waiting to Exhale. So I have not seen that movie. I do not know anything about it. But since he mentioned that being a real big movie at the time, oh man, I almost said it again. I almost said it again. I'm very curious to read it. Next, I don't know if I've featured this one on this channel before, so we'll see. But it is Buzz Aldrin, Men from Earth. So, a signed book by Buzz Aldrin, the second man on the moon. I want to quote the line from The Simpsons, but I don't remember what it is at this point. I think it's like second comes right after first. Buzz Aldrin. I was really excited when I saw this because I was actually kind of hoping to get a signed something from Buzz Aldrin just because he's freaking walked on the moon. But I was just at the bookstore one day and I like looked at the glass cabinet where they have like some more rare, expensiver books. And I saw this. So I was like, I asked the bookstore owner, because it says down here Buzz Aldrin and Malcolm McConnell. And this was like in a glass case. I was like, who is this signed by? Is it signed by Aldrin or this Malcolm McConnell dude? And so he said, Buzz Aldrin. So I was like, I want it. And so I got it. This is another book I don't know if I've showed on this channel before because I got this book sometime like almost a year ago maybe, but it's Christmas with Ed Sullivan. So I've seen this book like for a long while at the bookstore and there's a signed sticker here. But for whatever reason, even though I saw Christmas with Ed Sullivan, I thought, oh, well, that's, written by somebody else. It's not written by Ed Sullivan. But I finally took this book out just to see who the author is. And the only thing on the cover there is Christmas with Ed Sullivan. There's no by whoever. So I was like, is this signed by Ed Sullivan? And I looked and there it is, Ed Sullivan. To Jim. In case anyone's wondering, I asked the bookstore owner, hey, are inscribed books worth anything? Or are they less valuable since it's to, in this case, to Jim? And what he said is it really depends on the person, but generally if it's just something generic like that, to Jim, to Bob, to Catherine, whatever, the value may be a little bit down because obviously I'm not Jim. But if the book is inscribed to someone who actually has some kind of a connection to the author or is a famous person, then that might actually increase the value. So for instance, if it says something like, to Jim, my neighbor or something, to, Joanne, the best agent one can ask for, to my beloved parents, whatever. So if it's inscribed to someone that the author has some kind of a connection with, that the value may be fine or it may go up. But if it's just generically to, so-and-so, and kind of less value, you don't really want that generally. But it depends on the collector. So I think that makes a lot of sense though. If it's someone the author has a personal connection with, where it's to my friend so-and-so, then it's kind of has a little extra value in a way because it's oh, this was actually written or signed for a friend of the author or, a family member of the author. That kind of makes it special. Just having it be to Jim, to Bob, to Catherine, whatever, it's kind of who are they? I'm not them. Next, I was pretty excited when I saw this because I knew the name of this person, but I wasn't positive from where. And that is Lauren Bacall, by Myself and Then Some. So I had to look it up because I was like, Lauren Bacall, I know that name. I knew she was like an actress, but couldn't quite place her. So Lauren Bacall was married to actors in two of my favorite movies. Humphrey Bogart from Casablanca and Jason Robards from Once Upon a Time in the West. Two of my absolute favorite movies. So usually I wouldn't be interested in reading a memoirs, but since she was married to Humphrey Bogart and Jason Robards, and I'm really interested in those movies, I like those movies a lot, I'm curious what she has to say. Okay, the next four ones are pretty cool, I think. These are going to be my favorites of the bunch. Beginning with one I got today. Why Not Victory, signed by Barry Goldwater. So, Barry Goldwater is one of like my favorite presidential candidates, I guess. He ran in the unsuccessful 1964 race against Lyndon Johnson, and he got creamed pretty much. But of all the elections in US history, really, Barry Goldwater's 1964 is kind of one where I kind of am like, man, I wonder what would have happened if Barry Goldwater would have became president. The thing with Barry Goldwater is he was kind of a libertarian Republican. He was much more, I guess, moderate or liberal on like social issues, like especially around like abortion and stuff. And this book is about foreign policy. So the subtitle here is A Fresh Look at American Foreign Policy. So I'm really curious to see what he has to say about it. I have never really actually read much of anything ever on Barry Goldwater. I mean, like actually written by him. So I'm very interested in giving it a read. When I saw this today, I was just like, Barry Goldwater, I need it. And there are several books at the bookstore that are like, I need it. But this is an I need it book where it's like, I really, really need it. I don't want to walk out the door without this. So I didn't. I got it. Next, this is a book when I saw it and saw the signed sticker, I was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Because I have kind of looked for this guy's books signed whenever I see him. Like I've always looked for a signed sticker when I saw this guy's books because I've wanted one. So without further ado, that book is Blue at the Mizzen by Patrick O'Brian. If you don't know him, Patrick O'Brian is the author of the series that was adapted into the movie Master and Commander with Russell Crowe, which I think I have mentioned before on this channel. I love that movie. That's another of my favorite movies of all time, Master and Commander. I've actually read the first 3 books in that series, the Aubrey Mateen series, I think it's called. And basically, I did not really like them because they are just so full of like navigational sailor jargon, just talking about like sails and everything and like decks and the midsum sail and I don't know, all this stuff. And his books are just so freaking boring. But what I think the movie did so well is it took little bits from each of the books where the best parts of the books, really like witty lines or whatever, or just like enjoyable little scenes, enjoyable moments, and they mashed it all together into the movie, which was a real good movie, I thought. But the book, it was just so much fluff and so much boring stuff and just such a boring series. But in spite of that, I've really wanted to get a signed book by him because I love the movie so much. And as far as like navigational or nautical stories go, nautical adventure stories, I think Patrick O'Brian is kind of like the king of that. I mean, I don't know. So when I saw this, I was just like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, I need that. And so I got it. So I'm really excited about this. Something about this book is actually this is the last book he completed, Blue at the Mizzen. I think it's the 20th book in the series. He wrote one more, but he died like while he was writing it, so it wasn't finished. Um, and he died, I think, a year after publishing this book. So this is like definitely one of his final autographs. For all I know, this was his last signed book. So that's really neat. Ideally, I could have gotten like the first book signed by him, but that'd probably be like worth way more. So instead, it's the last book by him signed, which in itself is pretty cool. Now, a question is, am I actually going to want to try to get back into the series? I don't know, and part of the problem is I don't know if I would like want to try to reread the whole series, or if I would just try to pick it up with like book 3 or 4 where I left off. I don't know. Just the thing about it is the series was just so boring, so I don't know. But a signed book by Patrick O'Brien. I think that is awesome. This is definitely one of my more treasured autographs. It's an autograph I've been looking out for a long while, just because it's a real popular author, real popular series, and the movie is great. I love the movie so much. So to have a signed book by the author of that series, I just think is really cool. So now whenever I watch that movie, I could be like, I have a signed book by the guy who wrote that. Next, this is not an author I have read yet, but she is on the top 1000 list for a book that I have not actually been able to find. I've looked for this book like every time I've seen her books at the bookstore, and they just don't have it, and I don't really know why. But I saw this book by her in the back room at the bookstore, and I was just like, a signed book by the author. I need to get that. And one of the booktubers I follow, she really likes this author. Like, this is her favorite author of all time. So maybe she'll be real jealous that I got this. We'll see. But that book is Dancing at the Edge of the World, signed by Ursula K. Le Guin. Lagoon? I don't know how to pronounce her name. But anyway, so I'm just really excited to find a signed book by her. Every time I've seen her books at the bookstore, I've kind of checked to see if there's a signed sticker on any of them, just because I want to get a signed book by her. And I found one. So as soon as I saw this, I knew I wanted it. So I think I've got it that same day. Really excited about that, but have not read anything by this author yet, but I know a lot of people like her. I don't know what to expect really. I don't even really quite know what genre she writes. I think she may kind of write like low sci-fi, like not really deep sci-fi, like I don't know. And also like some romancy stuff, maybe some like fantasy romance. I really don't know. I don't know what she writes at all really. So I'm curious to give her a try. I don't know if I'm going to read this book first or another book by her. Like if I'll try to get the first book she ever wrote, or if I'll try to get that book off the top 1000 list, like maybe just order it online or whatever. So I don't know which book to start out on, but I'm definitely wanting to read something by her, and I have to read the top 1000 book by her at some point. Next, this is another book. When I saw it, I was like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. And if you've seen my channel before, you'll know right away as soon as I mention this author that I've talked about them quite a bit. And I think I have 3 or 4 signed books by this author. Currently, they are my favorite writer of all time. I am currently reading one of this person's books. That book, signed, is Going After Casiado by Tim O'Brien. So Tim O'Brien is perhaps most famous for either The Things They Carried, which is one of my favorite books of all time. Right now I rank it my second favorite book of all time. The Things They Carried is an absolutely perfect book. It's a beautiful book. It's a work of art. I absolutely love that book. I've raved about it ever since reading it. I love it. I've also read In the Lake of the Woods by Tim O'Brien. I have a signed copy of that. I like that book a lot as well. I recently tried to read July, July by Tim O'Brien, which I have a signed copy of, which I did not actually like. That book did not really work for me. So I didn't really like that one. But Going After Cassiato is like the other book Tim O'Brien is real famous for. The Things They Carried and Going After Cassiato. The bookstore owner says that Going After Cassiato is actually his favorite book of all time about the Vietnam War. So that is real high praise, and I don't know quite what to think of that, because I think like The Things They Carried was perfect. How could he write a book even better than that? To me, it just can't be done. But apparently he likes Going After Cassiato more. And I actually have a copy of this book up there. I got it unsigned because I want to read every Tim O'Brien book. But then I saw this in the glass case of the bookstore. He just got this book like this month when I saw it. And so when I saw this, I was like, I need that book. Can you put that aside for me? Because I definitely want to buy that. And so I did. I don't know what to think now going in reading this whenever I get around to it, because it's such a popular book by Tim O'Brien, and I have a signed copy of it, which makes it even so much sweeter. Like, even if I was just to read the unsigned copy, I'd have real high expectations, because I just knew of that title, Going After Cassiato, for so long. Ever since I fell in love with Tim O'Brien, the bookstore owner has always said, like, you know, you got to read Going After Cassiato. That's his best book, he said. So when I got it, I was like, okay, I'm really looking forward to this. This is like my most anticipated read by Tim O'Brien. But then I saw he had a signed copy of it. So I just freaked out. But now I'm nervous, because it's like, what if I don't actually like this book? I don't think that'll be a problem, though. I think anything really dealing with the Vietnam War, to me, will be a hit for Tim O'Brien. He just writes that subject so well. So one way or the other, I'm really excited to have this book, because it's really like one of Tim O'Brien's best books. People will either say Going After Cassiato or The Things They Carried. So to have a signed copy of one of those, I think is great. So I'm really fond of this. When I got this, I thought this would be a contender for one of like my most treasured signed books, like one of my favorite signed books, even though I haven't read it yet. Just Going After Cassiato by Tim O'Brien. That is really cool. I didn't think I could get much better than this. But last week at the bookstore, I saw another book that made me freak out again. I wish I could tell more of a story to build it up, but I really can't. So all I can really say is when I saw this, I freaked out. And anyway, without further ado, let's just get into it. That book is The Good Earth by Pearl S. Buck. The Good Earth was one of the first books I ever read, especially one of the first non-Clive Cussler books I ever read. This is a book that really got me into reading. There are really 3 books I read in high school that were like the first non-Clive Cussler books I ever read. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne, Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck, and The Good Earth by Pearl S. Buck. Those are kind of the first 3 non-Clive Cussler books I ever read. But between them, the standout for me has always been The Good Earth. So whenever I would talk to people about my most influential books, the books that really got me into reading, the 2 books I would probably say would be Atlantis Found, the first Clive Cussler book I read, and The Good Earth. It was a massively influential book for me because I thought it was just such a good book, and I was just so in love with the book. And just how the farmer began to prosper, and then he goes and starts seeing this prostitute and starts spending all his money on her. I was just really in love with that book, and ever since reading it, I've always had real fond memories of it. So when I saw this, I saw The Good Earth, and I was like, oh, Pearl S. Buck. And then I was looking at it, and I saw the sign sticker, and my brain just kind of melted, because I was like, a signed book by Pearl S. Buck. I forgot at that point, instantly I forgot it was The Good Earth. To me, it was just Pearl S. Buck. I saw that and I was just like, oh my freaking God, a signed Pearl S. Buck book. I didn't even remember it was The Good Earth. So I ran out to the bookstore and I was like, to the bookstore owner, I was like, you have a signed Pearl S. Pearl S. Buck book? Since when? And I was like, is the price on that accurate? The price was $350. Because I was like, are you really selling that for $350? Because I thought that was like a bargain. So I like looked up in my phone like Pearl S. Buck signed books, and I was seeing like price tags in the vicinity of like $750 or $900. A first edition of this book actually fetches like $7,000, which this is not. This is not a first edition. So I saw $350 and I was just like, is this price wrong? Because otherwise I have to get this book. And at that point I was still thinking this was just a regular Pearl S. Buck book, because I didn't think there was any way it would be The Good Earth. So he was like, well, go get it and show it to me and we'll take a look at it. So I went back and I got it and I saw it was The Good Earth. And I was just like, there is no way he's going to sell this to me for $350. And so I took it out for him and he's looking at it and he's like, well, I'll give it to you for $300. And I was like, sold. But I actually paid for the book with store credit. So out the door, I actually paid like $100 for this book. So really super excited about that. I think that's a major steal. Pearl S. Buck, The Good Earth of all things. I'm just still freaking out. It's such a classic book to me. It's an influential book. It's not like quite on par with like Ernest Hemingway or John Steinbeck or Jack London maybe, or like Mark Twain. It's not like quite like in those guys' category, but I think it's like just a notch below it really, and just a slim notch. So The Good Earth, I just freaked out. Oh my God. I'm sorry, I'm being repetitive by now, but I'm excited. I love this. In honor of getting The Good Earth, I think just for, I was going to swear, just for shoots and giggles, in this book, Keeping Creed, one of my books, I actually mention or talk about The Good Earth. So just for fun, I want to read you guys those passages. Okay, but we are here on chapter 3 with Tessa. This is a little bit into the chapter, but it says, in third period English class, Mr. Johnston called her up to his desk to deliver a book report. She had picked the novel The Good Earth by Pearl S. Buck. The reason I chose that book was because that was the book I read in English class. The reasons she selected this book over any other were more coincidental than anything else. The name Pearl humored her, and it was one of the books set up for display on the checkout desk at the school library. Mr. Johnston was a short man whose rimless glasses sat perched on a thick bridge of a heart-shaped nose. His cheeks were flabby and his neck sagged sadly. Hey, that rhymes. Curls of fat rippled down his body, and his arms and hands were chubby. He spoke in a high-pitched voice. Tessa liked him because he was nice, was the only teacher in her school who was openly gay, and because he was a liberal. So said he, placing his fish stick-shaped finger onto his cheekbone. What's this book about? It's about a farmer who struggles to make money while raising a family. He eventually moves south. There is talk of war, but he begins to prosper. He becomes wealthy and starts seeing a prostitute. He becomes lazy, and at the end, after his death, his sons sell off the land he acquired. She was doing her best to read off the back of the book and the summary she pulled off the internet while trying to sound like she was recalling it from memory. Who is Wang Lung? He's the main guy of the story. He's the farmer. And Olan? That's his wife. So much she got from reading the first few pages. That is, however, all she read. She was now exposed, defenseless, and ignorant of the rest of the story. The teacher flipped through the book, then asked, "Who is Lotus Flower?" She had no clue. "She's Wang's neighbor. She grows flowers and sells them." And Pear Blossom? That's Lotus Flower's brother. He grows fruit, pears. He sells them too. His eyes glimpsed down at the page, then into her stony eyes. How much of this book did you read? All of it. She crossed her ankles because crossing her fingers simply wouldn't do. How much of this book did you really read? Her shoulders hunched. A few chapters. It was boring. Anyway, then it goes on in a few scenes later to talk about the book again. So Tessa is with her new friend Megan. And so it says here, remembering Megan wanted to be a librarian, Tessa said, I had a book report today. Sweet. What book? The Good Earth. Ooh, that's one of my favorites. I love Pearl S. Buck. I love when Wang Lung starts having good harvests and buys more and more land. But then he starts saying lotus flower. What did you think of it? I didn't like it. Megan's brows crinkled. Really? What genre do you like? You must like something. No, not really. And then it goes on. But anyway, so The Good Earth, Pearl S. Buck. I can't believe I have a signed copy of that. I am so thrilled about that. Really influential book for me. Really helped to get me into reading and writing. Before then, I really had no interest in books. After that, I've just been consumed with books. So, really influential book. I mean, of all the books I could ever attribute my love of reading and writing, it'd be Atlantis Found by Clive Cussler and The Good Earth by Pearl S. Buck. Those two books began it all. So, oh, it's not a signed copy of Atlantis Found, but I do have a signed Clive Cussler book right there. So, really excited about that too. I really treasure all of these, so they're real special to me, and I love them. I don't know what I'll ever do with them. I'm not planning to sell any of these, so I don't know. Maybe I'll just have these until I die, and then someone will just inherit all of them, and hopefully they don't throw them away. Hopefully people know, don't just throw these books away. Don't take them to the dump. A lot of these books are signed. They may be valuable, so be careful with them. Could you imagine if I just pass away and someone's like, oh, well, I'll just clear out Sean's bookshelf. And so they just see The Good Earth and they're like, throw it in the dump. And it's don't do that. That book is signed. I'm going to have to actually get stickers to make sure all of the signed books are actually identified. So that doesn't happen. Because not all of these have signed stickers. Right over here. Here's a Bill Nye autograph. Doesn't say anything on the book. It's just you have to open it to see that it's signed. So, anyway, I'm sorry, I'm talking too much. Anyway, that's enough for this video. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for, sitting through all of my rambling. If you have, I don't know who would really. But if you have, if you've stuck it out till now, thank you. And thank you for being patient. And I don't think I actually said that word that shall not be said, intrigued at all anymore. So I think I just said it the 3 times. We'll see. But anyway, that's a little personal victory. It was definitely a conscious effort not to say it. But anyway, that's enough. Thank you guys for watching. Hope to see you in another video. Bye.